So, welcome to the First in Class podcast. When I think about class, I think about the individual that we have on today, Nick Lowery. Nick is a NFL star. He was an NFL kicker. He made 3 Pro Bowls. He was a Kansas City Chief. He's in the Kansas City Chiefs Hall of Fame. He played for the Patriots and he played for my New York Jets. He's in the Chiefs Hall of Fame. He was the scoring leader in 1990. He won the Whizzer White NFL Man of the Year. He's an incredibly smart individual with degrees from Harvard and Dartmouth. Those are 2 pretty impressive schools, Nick. What's most impressive about Nick is he's a humanitarian. He gives back tirelessly to the community in terms of the homeless. He's involved in raising funds for Alzheimer's and the Alzheimer's clinics. He is a mentor now and does speaking engagements. Just an awesome individual. Nick, welcome to the First in Class podcast.
Well, thank you, Corey. You clearly care about making a difference, and so you send great messages to me, which I really appreciate. This is, to me, the hardest thing to do, and the thing I really feel like my life after 18 years in the NFL, as great as that was, and certainly without that, I wouldn't be who I am today and what I focus on today. But really, the hardest thing is to make your career after what was a blessed sports career just as important, just as valuable, just as meaningful. And I've got a very strange background growing up next door to a Supreme Court Justice, Byron Whizzer White, who happened to lead the NFL in rushing twice in 3 years in the NFL, the largest bonus ever given an NFL player by the Rooney family for the Steelers, led the NFL in rushing, then happened to go to Oxford on his Rhodes Scholarship, and then came back and led the Detroit Lions in rushing. And then was an attorney for a long time, finished number 1 at Yale Law School, by the way, the same year he led the NFL in rushing. And just incredible human being. So I've been blessed with that growing up in D.C., and it's in my blood to do something with the time we have on this earth, to connect with great people like Corey, and to the people watching. Everybody can make a difference in the world. And I just love being able to connect people to great causes, so we feel like we're living lives that really matter.
Yeah, you're just such just an awesome individual. When we met, actually, I'd met Nick. We were both at a Rod Stewart concert in Las Vegas. I was with my wife, and I went up to him because I'd recognized him. And he was just such a great guy. We connected right away. We stayed in touch. We were both at the Super Bowl last year, both at the Super Bowl the year before. Of course, Lee Steinberg's thing that he does every year for concussions and research. And unfortunately, I didn't see you there. I was looking for you everywhere, but
I was there. Lee Steinberg was my agent. And for those that don't know, Lee Steinberg was the first agent to really make a statement that we all have an obligation, and athletes especially, to give back, to thank their parents, their families, their schools, their mentors, their coaches, by giving back. And every one of his athletes did that. A guy named Rolf Benerschke, who I had met with the New England Patriots before our game against the San Diego Chargers, my second and last game for the Patriots in a short career with them. And Rolf just exuded class. And he had started a program called Kicks for Critters, which raised money for the Endangered Species Program at San Diego Zoo. And I thought, that's so cool. And so I started Kick with Nick for cerebral palsy with the help of Lee Steinberg. And those efforts, I like to think of the tree of purpose in life. It is like a tree. So each time you do a new thing, you step up to a higher branch. Excuse me. And you can see things a little bit better from a higher branch. And each time you get more clear about what really matters. And maybe you get better at selecting the right people to work with, and the right people to surround yourself with. And it's a funny thing. It's a magnetic thing. When you are doing things that make a difference, you tend to meet people that care about more than just themselves. And I don't think the idea is that you get lost in that and lose yourself completely. It's more about saying, hey, how am I connected with God's unique gifts in me, which are unique in Corey, unique in me, and unique in everybody watching? And how do I harness those with all the adversity that I've gone through, all the rejections, all the failures, missed field goals, to learn, and get more curious, more creative, more effective, and then turn it into this beautiful highway of purpose, using our gifts to help other people. That's how this world, which is so, excuse me, I need some water. That's how this world, which seems to be so divided with all the interesting algorithms, which I'm sure you're aware of in finance and marketing, designed to divide us. And we have to step up and say, no, we are one. God's in each of us in a unique way, and we each can do great things.
And it's amazing what you're saying, because you'd mentioned Lee. So when I first saw the movie Jerry Maguire, I had a very unique response to it. I actually, it moved me so much to the point of tears. And I was a young man at the time. I was, I think, about 26 years old. 26 years old. I had just started in the financial services industry. And it was the fact that here was this guy that was willing to risk everything because of something that he believed in, and that was personal relationships. In a world where everybody was just focused on themselves and doing what was best for them, this individual wanted to focus on personal relationships. And it was that day that I decided for myself, this is what I want for me. This is how I want to conduct my business. I always want to focus on what's best for the individual that I'm working with. And it literally moved me to tears. I was so inspired. I was just like, you know, when someone has a movie has an impact on you, or an individual has such a great impact on you. Well, that was it. And then when I met him a couple of years ago, I told him, I said, you don't know me. You don't know anything about me, but you've impacted how I've created my business, my model, my mission statement, everything. Was because of you. You were the first individual that inspired me. So it's no coincidence that you and I met, as you say, you know, no. the universe coming together.
And you know, that movie, think about it. What I love is it's got depth to it. And Lee was the main consultant to it. Tom Cruise goes through and as that character, Jerry Maguire, through his own failures and rejections. And, you know, he stays up all night writing this treatise about how we got to do more than just this, even though earlier the stage was set. And Lee's character, Jerry Maguire's character, where he's talking to his client and he hears, show me the money, show me the money, yeah. which was fun. But in the end, you see that he's there for him. I get tears just thinking about it. Coming back to him, hugging each other after a game, family being part of it, which, by the way, not enough athletes' families are together. And that's a really important message if we can change and turn that around. But just a beautiful thing, because, you know, you remember the character, Renee Zellweger, and her kid, this cute little kid. My God, I don't know where he is now, but that was the best casting of all. And that whole idea of, you got the business, you got the violence of the game, but then you got the family, you got the little kid, and the little kid in the end is not lost. He's not lost in that jigsaw puzzle of life, making all those choices. And Lee's character, or Jerry Maguire, played by Tom Cruise, realizes that. And, you know, of course, underscored by that wonderful line from Renee Zellweger, you had me at hello.
Yeah. Fantastic. And this is what I love about business, you know, and individuals. I love people that are real. You know, they can be themselves. You alluded to it before. people that have gifts. It seems to me that one of your gifts is similar to one of mine. It seems like you have a lot of gratitude for other people, for certain things in life. Where did you get that from? When did you first develop that great quality?
I just think once you realize it, it just builds from there. I had Dick Johnson telling me as I walked from my mother's and father's station wagon. My mother dropped me off at St. Albans School. Here's this elderly man who's going to coach me, and he interrupts my pattern right away and says, "Did you thank her?" I'm like, "What? Did you thank her? She just took 25 minutes to drive you down here, and that's to drive back." And Dick then sat me down and really immediately started to emphasize how managing this was the most important part of the physical act of being a great kicker, and had me relax and just practice that. And but also think about what one has to be grateful for. And he said, 6 weeks ago, I was on my deathbed with hepatitis, and this kid appeared in front of me I hadn't thought of in 50 years, and he still was the kid. So I knew this was a dream. But he said, "Dick, you were there for me when everybody else turned their back, and when I was being bullied and beaten up almost every day in school. You were the one that was there for me. So it's my turn to say, I'm there for you. You're not going to die." And he was so filled with gratitude. It was like God was in the moment every time I was with him. And what ended up happening, which was the first major signpost for me about potential, because you think, maybe, am I being egotistical, think I might be able to play in the NFL? I'm going to a small prep school, the National Cathedral School for Boys. Nobody had ever played pro football from there. And because Dick had helped me think about the mental side and the team practiced it, we were able to have a run-on field goal in the freezing rain and 3, 4, 5 inches of mud with no timeouts, 20 seconds left, run on the field from the sidelines, line up a field goal, not be offside, protect me. And I kicked a 43-yard field goal that went through as the gun sounded. And we went from down 7-6 to beating our arch rival Landon 9-7. And that, we just had our, hard to believe, 50th high school reunion. And that really did become, and has become, kind of a legendary kick and in St. Albans lore. But it was such a signal to me about potential, right? And that started with my parents caring enough about me to make time for me to get coaching, a coach and a mentor in Dick Johnson, who coached me for the next 10 years. And, through college and through making it in the NFL after being rejected. So the gratitude comes from getting really clear, gosh, if I don't give up, I'm going to get better. And in fact, I didn't give up, and now I'm getting better, and now I'm getting better, and now I'm getting better, to the point where after 2 years of 11 rejections, on my 12th time, I gave up a job, a permanent job with the Senate, U.S. Senate Commerce Committee, working for Senator Bob Packwood on aviation deregulation, because I thought, these Kansas City Chiefs, they really want me. They're going to give me a $2,500 bonus. No one had ever given me any money before, and they were going to bring me in 3 months before training camp. No one had ever done that. I thought, maybe I should try one more time, even though I had this job with literally was all attorneys besides me. And I ended up being ready only because of all those rejections, only because of getting back up, only because the Rocky theme, we've heard it in many different forms. But the person I was 2 years later, from that first time with the Patriots and Ralph Bernerska saying good luck and blowing my only field goal attempt for them, even though we won, 2 years later, being able to beat out the greatest kicker in the history of the game, who became the first kicker in the Hall of Fame, Jan Stenerud, and not feeling guilty. It's like, I paid my dues. I'm ready now.
For sure.
And literally in my first field goals for the team, set an NFL record with 2 50-yarders. set a team record with a 57-yarder, third longest field goal in NFL history. Those are my first field goals. None of that would have happened if I'd given up 2 years earlier. And yet it happened. So that pattern, that lesson, though, is an eternal lesson that all of us can continue to apply, not just one time in a movie setting in Jerry Maguire, where Tom Cruise, Jerry Maguire doesn't give up, even though he has to leave the firm, even though he feels like a failure. One person cares about him. One person helps him stay with it. And that one person can change all of our lives. And obviously, the one person has to start with us, always. It has to be our work, not waiting for God to solve it. There's God in us. And so it's more listening. But that process was so powerful. So the gratitude, in a long-winded answer to your question, it's an ever evolving. It's like going from rock and roll to jazz to symphony, more sophisticated, more nuanced, more sublime, more subtle, getting more and more details of how it all plays out, always sacrificing ego, which helps us initially in life to develop an identity, into spirit, where we're all connected. God is in all of us. And that power and that wisdom is available to all of us if we don't give up and we keep asking and we keep listening.
Yeah, that's so great. And, you talk about, never giving up. And I hear a lot, and it makes a lot of sense that a winner is a loser who just never quit. Winner is a loser who just never quit. They continue to keep at it, and eventually, each step along the way, you're going to learn something new. You're going to get better. You're going to keep polishing up your skills, whatever that is. You get stronger. You get more resilient. You get hungrier. You get more focused, and you just keep improving along the way. And eventually, those losses, they add up to a big win. That's really great. So you start kicking with the Chiefs. You end up ultimately playing with some, just incredible athletes like Joe Montana, Marcus Allen. You mentioned Christian Okoye,
Derek Thomas,
Neil Smith, Derek Thomas. It just goes on and on and on. What was that experience like over the years? How did that build a foundation of who you are today? Because you're a champion off the field as well. You're a champion for many organizations. And how did those days and the things you learned from yourself and other individuals and coaches, and how did that impact who you are today for the world?
Well, I think when you make it, because you've had rejections, you learn a healthy level of self-doubt rather than neurotic. And the doubt feeds the idea that I have to keep getting better. It's motivation. It is, what else can I learn? I became the player rep for the Chiefs during the 1982 strike, kicking the game-winning field goal actually earlier that year in the Pro Bowl, with Steve Largent holding, with Jack Lambert swearing at me that I better make the kicker or rip my friggin' head off, and because you made twice as much money if we won, and with 17 Hall of Famers on that team. And then channeling it into things like Kick with Nick for cerebral palsy that I mentioned earlier, where you create intentionally, really important word and concept. I'm being intentional about the direction I want to go. I'm holding on to my own career purpose steering wheel. And because of that, being fed, images of kids that literally had a victory by learning how to tie their own shoelaces because they had cerebral palsy, learning how to laugh at themselves despite all of the sense of social distance from their so-called peers, realizing they still had abilities, not just disabilities. And so all of those things, intentionally putting ourselves into experiences to remind ourselves, my favorite word, refresh the mind, remind ourselves what really matters. And, going to the oncology unit at Children's Hospital, how does that not affect you? To see a kid with cancer wanting to be buried in my jersey is one example. A parents calling, and the Arrowhead Stadium saying their newborn had a rare birth defect. God, asking me to hold their hands while they took their 2-day-old baby off life support.
Yeah.
How do you say no to that? And I remember feeling the warm, perfectly formed foot of that little baby, and just the intensity of those moments, which there's so much going on. You can't even digest all of it, but it's affecting you and your sense of appreciation that you can help people, and also remind yourself of the humanity we all share and the shortness that this life is. And then a year later, getting a letter from those same people with a picture of their healthy newborn. Just gosh. And then just all of those opportunities we can tap into to inspire, speaking to sports teams, to kids before they play. I'm very talkative today, but I'll give you an example. These are all mini stages, and each time you do it, just like giving that opportunity to a young person to speak in front of a group, every time they see themselves a little bit more as a leader with divine power to help others. I was asked to have started something called Native Vision way back in 1996 when I moved out here to Arizona. And Mary Kim Titla, who was the reporter for NBC for a long time, and the only full-blooded Native American reporter in the country. And we'd gotten to know each other in our work with American Indian youth. If you look up Native Vision, we started that back then with Johns Hopkins and got the NFL Players Association involved. And she said, would you come out? My son, Bear, is the quarterback for the 8th grade San Carlos Apache reservation team. And I said, sure. I drove out there, and there's a picture of me with the scoreboard with 22 minutes before the game, counting down the clock, fading light. And for those of you that don't know, the San Carlos Apache Reservation is about 90 minutes southeast of Phoenix, and it's actually where Geronimo spent much time. And these kids, the photo now has the white jerseys with beautiful, thick, dark hair. These kids are looking at me. I'm wearing my Chiefs jersey. And all I said was, it's not that complicated. I was the first NFL player they'd ever met. And I said, I'm not a magician, but I just tell you, magic can happen when you bring all of your focus and all of your passion for the next 2 hours. All of it. And I said more than that, but not a lot more. And they scored. They had lost. They were 0-6. They had lost 48-0 the week before, 38-0 the week before that, 28-10 the week before that, and yet a few words tapped into their own power, not mine, their power. And football, when you score, the other team gets the ball and you have to get it back. They scored 3 touchdowns in the first 11 plays, and they did not lose another game. They won the rest of their games. And then Mary Kim called me about 4 months later and said, we just finished the basketball season, and all the kids on that team, of those, I think there were 22 members on that team and 16 other were on the basketball team, just finished the regular season undefeated. Now, that wasn't me, but it certainly didn't hurt, apparently, what I said, which was just reminding them of the locus of control of their focus and their passion. And if we do that, we can remain intentional with great accuracy, like Robin Hood, to the better angels, to the better purpose. And, what is better than helping kids discover their own power to be great at something? And that just becomes an avalanche of lessons always in that direction, particularly for Native American kids who so often have been told that their land and their history has been taken from them, to reclaim it. It's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that is truly awesome. And I'm with you. I love kids so much. And try to help them to, to learn and grow. And this is why I do this, to share messages that anything is possible, and to have great individuals like yourself on here sharing your successes and how you did it. And it's just, information for others to grow and learn, and to see as well that they can do it too. It's that belief, right? It's that belief in yourself. And sometimes we doubt ourselves, and sometimes, we don't get the results we want. But the key is to continue to believe in ourselves, have the confidence to fail, and keep going at it. I was blessed to, stumble across Tony Robbins in my mid-20s, and I've been in a world of self-development ever since. I too had a little direction growing up, and I became really focused as I got, closer to 30 in my late 20s, when I discovered this self-development stuff. And, I had a coach as well. I'm part of a group. You might have heard of the mentor, Tim Grover, who's, focused on mental mindset training, worked with Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, in the NFL, Aaron Donald, Las Vegas Raiders, lots of different teams. But I'm a huge proponent in mindset and mental mindset. And it looks like you've done your homework, and that's an area that's strong for you. And tell me about how your mental mindset has helped you create successes, and where you're heading now, sharing these secrets of the mind and strength, and helping other individuals reach their goals and objectives.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty good classroom when you have to learn how to perform in front of 80,000 people, millions on television, in 1.27 seconds, where you're moving towards the ball, which is being put down and not spinning, for at most 0.2 of a second. And you're supposed to be able to look down at the ground and be able to hit it at something you're not looking at 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 yards away. And you've got 11 very large people paid millions of dollars to block your kick. And you've got elements like weather and wind and, people shouting beautiful sonnets of love and about your mama. Being able to focus under pressure and being able to manage that, not only for the one kick, but what do you do to manage yourself on the sidelines? How do you manage yourself during the week so that when the game comes, you don't have other distractions? Think of all the great players. Just yesterday, three individuals, one and Kyrie Jackson just died in a car crash.
Yeah.
Rashee Rice almost died in a car crash and almost ended his career as an NFL player for the Chiefs by losing track of what really matters. I was actually on Tony Robbins' infomercial for about 12 years. And I loved his tapes. I love his books. I really don't like his seminars as much because I think they can rely too much on external forces and pressure rather than we have to do the work. We have to do the work. We have to do the work. And the work begins to metamorphose into play, becomes just who we are. And then it's not really so much work, it's just something we love to do. And kicking field goals teaches you not only how to prepare and visualize the situation with the score to make it as much like a game as possible in your preparation, so that when you're looking down at that spot and the holder's looking back at you, you're ready. You're ready. And there's so many voices that could be saying and talk you out of being confident and focused. But it also helps you deal with a missed field goal and deal with being a human being and continuing to learn, continuing to reduce. What I'm most proud of really is my percentages went from 76%, which was the NFL record with my 100th field goal, up to really 86% after I turned 34. And how did I do that? Tony's tapes, I will say they help because what they do is they help you think through your priorities and get really clear on your top one or two and get really clear on your internal command, mastery. And so Tony, there's no one better than Tony at that. I did tell him way back near the end of my career when he was saying, gosh, I've done all the things I want, but I still feel like I haven't tapped into everything. I said, well, it's obvious to me. It's being able to use your success to help other people. And I just finished working in the Clinton administration in the off season on AmeriCorps, which is this domestic Peace Corps. Like, if you look at Tony's work now, it's gone much more in that direction. He has a new wife. It's been a while now, so he's had a new wife for a while, and I think that relationship's helped him really emphasize the balance of striving for money and commercial success and contribution. So yeah, that first year after I took his tapes, I led the NFL in scoring, and he invited me on. I shot down in my basement at 6,000 Windsor Drive in Fairway, across from the Kansas City Country Club, shot an infomercial that was on there for, I think, almost 12 years as part of that infomercial. I just wanted to just thank him for that. And he took me to the Stanley Cup. He took me to the NBA All-Star Game. I went to Fiji, Namale, Fiji in 1994 there. And, so he was, I think, the first great and remains the standard. But in the end, we cannot make Tony Robbins God. We cannot make other people God. God is in us. And there's another important distinction is we're not praying to God out there. We're listening to God in us, being able to distinguish what is that still voice, not shouting, has so much power, it doesn't have to shout, that is the source of true wisdom. That is the source of greatness. And remembering and reminding ourselves, that's really where our power is. Stay humble. My mom and dad passed away 15 years ago, and 17 years ago, my brother Chris died 3 years ago of complications during COVID with Alzheimer's and prostate cancer. And, all of us have tragedies. All of us have friends going through tragedies. And that keeps us, I think, balanced in the preciousness of life and this script which God has given for us to write in a way that brings meaning not only to ourselves, but to everyone around us.
Yeah, pretty incredible stuff. You dealt with a lot of pressure during your career. What stands out for you as one of the most pressure kicks you ever had?
Well, I had 3 game-winning field goals in the Pro Bowl, but that's just the Pro Bowl, although it really was a serious game back then. It isn't anymore. It's flag football essentially in exhibitions. But in 1994, we're playing the playoffs against Pittsburgh, and we tied the game, and we got one last ditch drive in regulation, and it's 24-all. And Marty doesn't decide to kick the field goal to the last second. So I run out there and I miss a 43-yarder. And it just like, oh my God. Prided myself on hitting these big kicks. We go to overtime, and now I've got to control. I'm telling this for a reason, right? I screwed up. I failed my teammates. And just said, get out there early, be ready. And Joe Montana, Marcus Allen, J.J. Burden, my buddy, and Keith Cash, and all the great players on that team, we created another opportunity, and I made sure that I drilled that. And Rod Woodson, who became a friend, played in 2 Pro Bowls with me. There's a picture of him going like this, trying to block it, and the ball's about 4 feet above his hands.
I remember that picture, yeah.
And so maybe I'll just measure that, because, gosh, if I'd missed that, I would have been lunch meat, I'm sure, as the biggest loser ever. And you can't focus on that. It's focus on what you can control. Always. It's focusing on what we can control. We can't control the wind. We can't control the fans. We can't control the writers. We can't control anything, but we can control ourselves. And ball went right through the middle, and beautiful memory of looking up and seeing, literally, it's a really cool game. Just like a incredible wave, red wave in the upper deck and around the stadium, and then turning around and seeing Joe going like this. And you can look it up, by the way. And Neil Smith running over, and all the players just, celebrating a big win. And the next week we played Warren Moon and the Houston Oilers in Houston, and had another huge win, and we make it to the AFC Championship game that year. So I'll give that as an example, because that's right in the battle. Great book that reminds me of that is The Red Badge of Courage. I read in maybe 8th, 9th grade. And the character in the book, written by Stephen Crane, has spent his whole time thinking about, am I going to be a hero? Am I going to be the man, the courageous one? And in his first battle, he has to retreat, and he feels like such a loser, to use that word, a coward. And he hides behind a tree, and he's thinking, gosh, this is who I am. And then before he knew it, there's another opportunity. And in that opportunity, he comes back and is a hero. So, relentless, constant persistence, belief, and suddenly the right things happen. But it's another humbling realization. It's always God's timing. It's not our timing.
Yeah. And a lot of the things you talk about are about controlling what you can control, right? Like having resilience, you can control that. Being humble, you can control that. Having the right attitude and belief, you can control that. Confidence, it all comes from inside. Everybody's focused on outside, but we have no control over the outside. We can only control what's inside. And once we control inside, if we do that really, really well, you start to actually, if you think about it, control the outside world to a certain degree. It's not guaranteed, but if you take control and you do all the things that are necessary on the inside, you have a much greater chance of success and controlling certain things, the uncontrollables, on the outside.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd even use the word control then. I would simply say that the fruit of that are much more the things that matter. And, being part of a winning team, making the Pro Bowl. I was in the Pro Bowl 3 times. I was All Pro 7 times. I don't know if anybody's ever been All Pro 7 times and only in the Pro Bowl 3 times. But, in the NFL, there are, like 8 or 9 offensive linemen. There are 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the Pro Bowl. There's only 1 kicker, and so much harder to make it. And then when you're part of a not so good team in the 80s with not a great offense, it's amazing what happened when Marty Schottenheimer came and we started to win. And so there's the lesson too. We do our part, and then being part of a winning team, other blessings happen. But my gosh, pretty easy then to go back to, wait a minute, I'm complaining that I was only in 3 Pro Bowls, and most accurate kicker in NFL history, had the most 50-yarders in NFL history, the best PAT percentage, 562 or 560.
How are you not in the Hall of Fame, man? I mean, I asked myself that because I remember, like, as a kid, I was a huge sports fan, and you were the most consistent kicker. Like, it was like Mr. Automatic. I think that was your nickname. I mean,
well, everybody that's watching, you call, write the Hall of Fame. Who knows? But it's meant to be. And there's another humbling thing, and I'd rather be in God's Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Well, you're on your way.
Part, and the biblical verses, well done.
You're on your way to God's Hall of Fame. That's for sure. Let's talk about what you've been up to in terms of, I know you're really involved with the Alzheimer's clinics, the vodka. You're a mentor. You're doing speaking engagements. Tell me about all of that stuff.
It's actually a tequila company called El Bandito.
Sorry,
Yankee
that's right, tequila.
My former teammate Jim Bob Morris ended up with Packers, and he started that, and I'm one of his ambassadors. We just did an event celebrating the Chiefs exactly a week ago at Lake of the Ozarks. Raised money for Wonderland Camp for kids with disabilities, which is right in my heart anyway. But Alzheimer's Treatment Centers is, and you as a financial wizard, I hope you'll check it out, because with AI, first of all, is a misnomer very often. We think of AI as being sort of, Arnold Schwarzenegger and this sort of demon-like, godlike force, but it really is like a puppy dog most of the time. If AI is not properly constrained and trained in what it's looking for, it can literally create things that don't exist. It literally, if you're a lawyer and you don't do your own homework, you can look for something and it will create a beautiful memo that makes it look like there's a law that really doesn't exist. That's called literally an AI hallucination. But what we do is with Alzheimer's treatment centers, we use AI along with incredibly good doctors. We have 7 people from Harvard Business School put together our team. I went to Harvard Kennedy School, and it's a combination. So instead of 15 or 11 minutes that you usually get with a doctor, it's 3 hours. Instead of 4 or 5 or 6 symptoms, it's DNA. It's hundreds of symptoms. Everybody has their unique pathway to dementia and Alzheimer's. My mother had dementia. Dementia being, you don't necessarily lose your personality with dementia. You lose your memory, your short-term memory. My mother remembered everything more than 5, 6 years old. Same thing with my brother, but Alzheimer's, you can begin to lose much more than that. And we now have a 75% success rate already arresting further deterioration with this treatment. So what happens is the AI, which creates a 30-page document, the doctors edit it, make changes. That's worked, and that's a combination of some pharmaceuticals, some nutraceuticals, and lots of incredible modalities. There's a new drug, a wonder drug coming out too, that as yet we haven't found any downside to it, but that is a constant thing. If we work diligently, we can change the paradigm of aging, where the fear of dying is actually superseded by the fear of dying without cognitive awareness, without a memory, without being able to remember who we are, or who our parents are, our family is, our friends are, which is such a nightmare for people to endure, not just the person itself, but their families, to see somebody disappear in front of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Country singer Jay Allen wrote a beautiful song about it. So I love that. We're just opening our second location. We have one in Atlanta and one now in Port St. Lucie, Florida, opening up in the next couple of weeks. And our goal is to have 100 in the next couple of years. So if anybody's interested, you can go to atca.health. Or Alzheimer's Treatment Centers of America. And, what's going to happen is, because we'll have thousands of patients, we'll begin to create a data level that is unprecedented on how certain factors were treated by certain combinations and others, so that we begin to really fine-tune the complexity of each unique person's pathway towards and away from Alzheimer's and dementia.
Amazing work you're doing. And in terms of, are you doing any speaking engagements as well? I've seen a few things, very, very good stuff.
I thank you. I'm working with a dear friend of mine, Tim Story, and we just did a thing with LA Style Magazine and something called the Industry Leaders Association. And I was on the Think and Grow Rich tour with Tim Story and my friend Brandon Adams and Sharon Lecter, an expert on financial literacy, all sorts of great people. And I'm in the movie Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy, 3 times, which is
fabulous.
Pretty cool. But I've kind of reduced my speaking level lately, because I'm finishing my book, which is called Naked and Alone with 80,000 People, which is what it's like when you're running on the field, feeling very naked and alone, and the process of being able to manage that, not only manage it in the actual field goals, but managing it on the sidelines, managing in your off seasons, managing off the field, so that you become a more complete success. And so once that book comes out in September, we're going to be doing quite a bit of speaking.
I'm looking forward to that for sure. And as an avid Chief fan, do you go to a lot of the games, or you go once in a while, or in the playoffs, or?
I went to 4 or 5 games last year. Went to the freezing cold game with Miami. I do a lot of, by the way, I really recommend a combination of intermittent fasting and cold plunging. I have an industrial strength ice maker by my bathtub, and I do that twice a day. I did it just before this show, by the way. Really important. Inflammation is really at the source of Alzheimer's and most of our issues. And that prepared me for that game. It was 27 below wind chill. And I went out there with my friend Scott Passmore, who's been the anchor for Good Morning Arizona here. He's from Kansas City originally. We're standing there, and I left my coat behind. I'm wearing a sweatshirt and some layers under it. But I'm like out there and like not cold, talking with the fans right down by the field. And Scott put on Instagram a bunch of pictures. I think I posted a couple too. And I'm going, boy, this is great. This ain't so bad. And you felt so much camaraderie with everybody, including the Miami fans, because you're there to sort of like, could die, but we're not going to, but it's ridiculously cold. And then right about 30 minutes, a little voice, speaking of that still voice, said, get your butt back up to the suite or else you're going to freeze to death. And anyway, so yeah, I go to about 4 games a year, about 1 a month. I went to actually the 5th one was the Chiefs game in SoFi Stadium in LA, where most of the players weren't playing in that game, but we still found a way to win and develop that unbelievable momentum to lead us to, I think, our greatest achievement, which is with not much of an offense, except for Rashee Rice, not a lot of receptions, and of course Travis Kelce, but not with our receiving core, not with a dominant running back. Okay running. But we found a way to still win the Super Bowl. So now with our acquisitions, with some great speed, Hollywood Brown and a few others, I think with a defense that just keeps getting better, very young defense, and a guy named Patrick Mahomes.
Such a great leader. Such a great leader.
Great leader. And speaking of humble, he always is positive for all of his teammates. You don't see him throwing people under the bus. Ever.
No, he's a great leader. You can see that, and he leads by example, and he's calm. You know, I always say when I've been watching this game for a long time, I'm a huge NFL fan. I haven't missed an NFL Sunday since 1982, and I always say that the teams that win the Super Bowl, it's not what their quarterback always does; it's what they do not do, and he's masterful at not making that extra turnover. It might be one, and it depends where it is often. It depends where the turnover happens, right? But it's his ability to lead and to not make mistakes that are going to end up costing you the game. But
Joe Montana, Tom Brady, and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
2 minutes left in the game. Any of those guys. By the way, just to give credit to my former teammate, briefly, Joe Montana, Joe Montana's quarterback rating was 127 in the Super Bowls, which is way better than anybody else.
Never lost.
And with today's rules, he was 4-0 in Super Bowls. With today's rules, he probably would have had 6 Super Bowl championships. But anyway, I have great respect for Tom Brady. I mean, all the different personnel that he had, all the different coaches, and yet he was able to pull it out. But the guy we've got now, quick story with Patrick Mahomes and Lee Steinberg, who we started this conversation with. Lee's party in 2019 was in Atlanta, and we were within a 4-inch offside penalty on linebacker D Ford when we intercepted Tom Brady in the AFC Championship game of going to our first Super Bowl a year earlier. But because we didn't, Patrick was in Atlanta without playing, and he was able to present the Lee Steinberg D. Nicola Humanitarian Award to me at Lee's party. So I'm backstage with Patrick Mahomes, never met him before, and he's right next to me. I said, hey, let's win a Super Bowl. He goes, let's win a bunch. And he has. And hopefully we'll win a bunch more. I mean, just incredible. And we have to, speaking of gratitude, we have to recognize right now, this is so ridiculous. We waited 50 years for one, and now we've had three, and we have a good shot at another one.
Yeah, absolutely. I see them really good possibility going back. When you got a quarterback like that, as you mentioned, a great defense, incredibly well coached, cohesive unit. I loved Andy Reid's response with the whole Travis Kelce thing, and he's just such a great coach, Andy Reid. It feels like he lets his players be who they are, and I think that fosters
He compliments. They
leadership.
complement each other,
Yeah,
don't they? I mean, they really do.
for sure.
Because Andy is not going to throw his players under the bus either, and yet he's also very creative. So, when you have Patrick and Travis and Chris Jones, along with Andy, I mean, without Andy, very little of this would have happened. Just manages his players, keeps them positive. Just
Yeah,
incredible.
you look at the greatest coaches too, like Phil Jackson. These individuals allow their players to be who they are, individuals, and I think that's what brings out the best in people when you can be who you are. It's for sure. I think brings out the best.
Turn them loose.
Exactly. So, in thinking, through everything, what do you want your legacy to be, Nick?
I'd love my legacy to be that I made my post NFL career even more important, more valuable than my NFL career, that I helped use those lessons to help other people find their purpose, and hopefully make my contribution to helping America restore itself for the beacon of light that it's always been during a dark time when so much division is happening, to remember character, of the American character, and courage, and all those, and transparency of leadership. The media today, we need to restore the great storytellers, because this one thing that Tony Robbins would say is, the stories we tell evoke our highest principles and values. So let's not be talking about, with all due respect to Kim Kardashian and all the, and et cetera, let's get back to telling the stories of true heroes. John F. Kennedy, I'm a John F. Kennedy Democrat, and Bill Clinton Democrat. I'm a centrist in many ways. But remember, he wrote a book called Profiles in Courage. And I think that was his statement that, we won this republic with a bunch of guys, some of whom these so-called founding fathers were 18 and 19 and 20 and 21. Ben Franklin was the oldest, but most of them were under 30. And they knew if we lost, they were dead. And they would have been dead, probably like William Wallace. They would have been drawn and quartered, And so, the courage and the vision to come together and make this nation. By the way, when I went to Harvard, I didn't know this until I went there. I lived off the Cambridge Commons, and there's a statue of George Washington on the Cambridge Commons convening the troops. And the date of that was July 4th, 1775. So I always find that interesting, because to have the vision to say a year before the Declaration of Independence, we've got to develop a continental army with our own uniform, something we can take pride in, and knowing the message it was sending to King George, et cetera, the redcoats, that, a year ahead of time, that this nation was going to, this new nation was going to be formed. And whether you like it or not, that took some courage and planning and organization. And planning means getting multiple people together on the same page. And that is never an easy thing. And I actually wrote a paper on George Washington for Professor Wilson, who's a great history professor at Dartmouth. I could not find, I had an office in the stacks at Baker Library. I could not find anything negative about George Washington. I mean, we do know, of course, back then, the compromise on slavery and positioning to sell all the slaves when they died. But when you look at George Washington and his leadership to position this country so that it could become truly great, we were really lucky for that. We need that kind of leadership. So I hope that I can just help us remember and be intentional about resetting the direction of this country towards transparency, towards great leadership, towards courage and character, contribution, service. But there's also a phrase in the Constitution about the pursuit of happiness. And happiness is not a temporal mood; it is a joy. That's what I think they're talking about, which is when you're living the life that you were intended to live, using God's unique gifts in you to help others.
Yeah, it's harmony. It's being in harmony with who you truly are, right? And if you can continue to be yourself and do the things that you know are right and that you know are that you match your values, I think that that's where you get true joy and happiness from. I want to thank you for your generosity, your time, your focus, your energy. It's always a pleasure to be around you, buddy. I think the world of you, you know that. And thank you for doing this.
Thank you. And stay tuned, because this podcast is going to keep growing, and you're going to see some great guests on here. And the conversation will always be magnetizing us to our better angels. And that's what we all need to do.
That's exactly it. You said it so well. Thank you, my friend. I look forward to seeing you soon. We got to catch up for a game this year.
You got it, brother.
Okay. Thanks, Nick.